Everybody is dealing with something. And that's really why I want to share these stories, because the more stories we tell, the more people can relate to them, and hopefully we can help, get through their own struggle.
Yeah, no, it's super simple to do a podcast. You basically just need a couple of microphones and sit down and talk for a little while.
It was Mother's Day, and we get a call back, and they're like, hey, she's waking up. 13 days in a coma, and she woke up.
We're constantly publishing new content. Be sure to like, subscribe, and ring that notification bell.
All right, so I want to welcome Jules LeMaster and Terri to the podcast today. I appreciate you guys coming out. So it's interesting. I feel like I somewhat know you a little bit because I've been following your story on Facebook, you and your mom's story, for how many months?
I think we're at 18 now.
18 months that I first saw you post about your mom's health situation. And so you guys came today to kind of share that experience and talk about, how God has changed you through this experience. And it's really a remarkable story that you have to tell. So I'm really excited for you guys to share it today. But I first wanted to just have you share a little bit of what it is you've been walking through, like the last 18 months.
Yeah, for sure. And thank you for having us. It's an honor to sit here, especially together. And share the story together.
Yeah, absolutely.
The story actually tracks back a little bit to 2017.
Okay.
In 2017, my mom fell down their basement stairs, and she had what's called a TBI, or traumatic brain injury.
Right.
And so they had to do brain surgery and relieve the pressure, all of that. So she remained with, basically a little hole from her brain. And but she recovered beautifully, went back to driving and fully independent, all of that. We didn't think anything else about it. So back in 2021 and 2022, she was dealing with some skin rashes, and she had lost a ton of weight, felt like anything she ate flared up her skin, but she really liked to take hot baths. It would soothe her skin, and she felt like it was a way to detox. So it was April 25th, 2022. She took a hot bath that night, and then went to get in the shower to wash her hair. And while in the shower, my dad and my brother, who were home, heard a sound. And they kind of look at each other like, that didn't sound good. And so my dad ran into the bathroom and saw my mom, slumped down against the shower door. Go through the process of calling 911. He did CPR for about 10 minutes before they got there.
Wow.
The whole 9 yards. So my brother called me in that time, and so I rush over while all the EMS people are there, and it didn't look like a situation you walk away from.
So you're clearly unconscious at this point. Okay.
So they had to use a defibrillator to get a steady pulse back.
Wow.
I think they had to do it twice at home, and then she coded again in the ER once we were there. So it took a lot to get her coming back. But once we were at the hospital, everyone's like, how are you doing? How are you doing? I'm like, you don't understand. I'm thankful to be here. And they're like, how are you thankful to be here? I'm like, I didn't think we were leaving home.
Here to the hospital.
So
absolutely.
I was just thankful. I'm like, at least we're here. We have a chance. This is the first step. So through a lot of testing they did was called a hypothermia treatment. When you have a cardiac arrest, they want to preserve all the organ functions. So they cooled her body for 2 days and then slowly warmed it back up. Through that process, they did find she was having seizure activity. And her heart, after all of that, was incredibly weak. It was 10 to 15% ejection fraction. So it was just a whirlwind of days and grueling waiting and just, going through the process. And once they found she was having seizures, they sent us to a different hospital for more monitoring of that. And then they did the MRI, and that's where everything really started to change. It was the MRI, we had hope. I'm like, okay, we can look at the heart once we find out if the brain is okay, because when your heart's down, you're not getting blood and oxygen to the brain. So once we were at the second hospital, they did the MRI, and it just showed what they called global damage. It was just every slide showed white and just damage. And they were like, this isn't good. You need to prepare yourselves.
Right.
So they were like, but even if the imaging shows this, we'll see what she will will do. So they turn off all sedation, and they were trying to get her to respond to pain. You know, they'd pinch her toes and like pinch her in different spots to see if she'd responded. She just wouldn't. So after 3 days of that, not getting any change in that neuro response, we decided to follow her wishes that she had written out ahead of time, and we had set up organ donation.
Okay.
So that was,
Wow.
I think that was May 4th that we started that process. It takes 48 hours for them to do testing, to line up, you know, the recipients. So, you know, we kind of had a time set that Friday evening, May 6th at 5 p.m. They were going to do the honor walk. We were going to go down to the OR and say our goodbyes.
Wow.
So
I didn't realize it was that, like,
yes.
okay.
It was
that is very
it was very intense and
like,
roller
yeah, when you
coaster.
say I'm like really glad to have my mom sitting here with me. I mean, that truly, that's amazing. I knew that you came very close to death, but I didn't realize it was that, you know, far gone.
Right.
Wow.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. So like an hour and a half, I think, before 5 o'clock, like 3:30, where like our friends and family were starting to come and meet with Dad and I, so we would be supported. And I remember the nurse came out. We were in the waiting room. It was, I call it our last supper. It was like a friend had given us a Chick-fil-A meal, and it was
Oh my
like
gosh.
the biggest spread I've ever seen.
That's funny. Yeah.
And so we were sitting there trying to eat.
Yeah.
And the nurse comes out and was like, you know, the doctor would like to see you in the room. We assume it's procedural. We go in, and he was like, watch this. And we're like, okay. And he came up and pinched her like right in her armpit, and her face just went and like cinched up, and we're like, what does that mean?
Wow. Wow.
And he's like, I think we need to call the neurologist back. And so he FaceTimed her right there on the spot. And so she's watching, you know, my mom's reaction and cinching her face. She's like, I think we need to give her more time. This is the first time we've seen this.
Yes.
So they did. They gave us a little bit more time. He still prepared us. He's like, this could be as far as it gets.
Yeah.
And they told us, you know, they encouraged us to do the organ donation because they're like, if she makes a recovery, we just question how much of a meaningful recovery. That's what they kept pushing, meaningful. You know, will she be a vegetable? Will she have any purpose in life? And it's like, we didn't want that for her. We knew she wouldn't have wanted that for us.
Yeah.
So we were at peace with it.
Right.
And I felt her spirit was already gone. There was a time that I felt that break, if you will.
Yeah.
And so the face cinching and putting on pause were like, okay.
Yeah.
So we waited Saturday, didn't really get much different response. And then Sunday was Mother's Day, and we come and saw the neurologist. And once the neurologist came and went, we're like, okay, we'll come back tomorrow and try it again. And I went home to be with my kids on Mother's Day, and we get a call back, and they're like, hey, she's waking up. We want you to come down so we can extubate her.
On Mother's Day.
On Mother's Day.
Wow.
So that was May 8th, 2022, 13 days in a coma, and she woke up.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is like, okay, so I remember seeing your story, like I said, on Facebook, and then at some point you entered into the Tattoos of My Soul prayer group, and we were sharing things there. But like I said, I'm kind of blown away at how like far gone, you know, this process was. And then for you to wake up on Mother's Day, like it's just very significant,
Right.
you know?
Yeah.
It's amazing. Like, I feel like it's truly a miracle.
Yeah. And we felt that.
I'm trying to think, like, if I was in your shoes, like, you're whipsawed emotion, like, okay, I'm preparing for my mom to pass away and say my last goodbyes and all those things. And then, you know, go from that extreme emotion to, okay, wait a second, there's still hope. And then the next day she's waking up. And like, can you speak to that a little bit about like, how do you even process that different, like, that's a huge circumstantial change.
It was,
you know?
It was. And I think I shared with you when we spoke last that very much that God's plans are always different and better than the plans I have myself.
Yeah.
You know, earlier on April 25th, we were texting about what we were going to do the next day. It's like, okay, those are my plans. And then boom, you know, the cardiac arrest and all of that, like my plans changed right there. And in my heart, I didn't believe that was for the best, what was happening.
Yeah.
And then we make plans for organ donation, and I'm at peace with the decision we're making. And And then the Lord had different plans again.
Yeah, yeah.
And I was just like, oh my gosh, what are we going to do?
Yeah.
And I think I remember saying, I have to walk out of this room. I was just like, I cannot.
Too much
I
to
cannot
process.
this.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
so, excuse me. So we did. My dad and I talked so much about the story of Lazarus during that time. And we just kept trying to understand what God was doing.
Yeah.
Because no one there.
Yeah.
We didn't, the doctors, the nursing staff, I mean, there was a crowd outside her door. They were in such shock. And following COVID, they talked about how many deaths they saw per shift.
Yeah.
And they just didn't see the good stories to turn around out of it. And so it was just, really, I still don't know what to make of all of it. But just that we just had to keep trusting God's plan.
Yeah.
Because every time we made plans, it changed.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I think there's for sure a lesson to be learned. And then I think too, like something else that you said was in the very beginning, you know, when you first got to the hospital, people are asking you, how do you feel? How are you doing? How are you doing? And you're like, I'm okay because I'm grateful just to be here. I didn't think we were going to get from point A to point B.
Right.
And I think that that's a good perspective, not just for this situation, but like for a lot of different situations in life, because we always have like this preconceived notion of how we think things should play out. And like what you're just talking about, like we have these plans and then they got completely changed. But if you can have that gratitude in the moment, like, hey, I'm thankful just to be here, because I love what you said. You said it gave me a chance to get to the next step.
Yeah.
And if I have a chance, then I can have hope.
Right.
You know, and I think when people, I was just talking about this the other day within the prayer group. We were doing a prayer for, I think we were even on, we were doing a prayer for people who are dealing with significant health conditions. And I was saying how important, and maybe you can speak to this because you've personally been in this, how important that element of hope is. Like even if it's just the smallest thing, to find something to remain hopeful for.
Right. Yeah, I remember asking probably mostly the nurses that would be in the room. I would just be like, but do you have hope? Like, it was like, I want to put my hope on them. Like, but have you seen this turnaround?
Yeah.
And, you know, it changed per person. And
Right,
they're like,
right.
well, and, you know, they're cautious, of course.
What they say.
But in my head, I'm like, but God can do anything.
Yeah.
And again, you know, that Philippians 4, 6, 7 verse, I never truly grasped that part of it, to bring your prayers to God, prayers and petitions with thanksgiving.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, I'm thankful to be here.
Yes. Yes.
Because that meant we had a chance.
Right.
And God has a chance.
Well, and you, before we started a few minutes ago, we were talking about that verse, and you said everybody always focuses, which I do too, on the don't be anxious part of that verse, because it says, you know, don't be anxious about anything, but with everything, you know, turn your worry into prayer in thanksgiving.
Yeah.
And everybody fixates on don't be anxious, because that's what we all do, right? We're anxious.
Absolutely.
We're anxious and we're worried. But if we can realize it is with that thankfulness and the gratitude, even when you are in like the pit, you know, and you are struggling, to have gratitude even in those moments has such profound power, not just for your mindset, but it for, you know, prayer, for intention, for healing.
There's a lot to be said in acknowledging to God, you know, what you've seen him already do.
Yes.
And saying like,
yes,
having the expectation, like we talked about, like, I've seen you do this, so I expect.
And trusting.
I trust to see more.
Yeah. And you said something the other day when we talked on the phone that makes me think of that last point. You said, so your mom, you said you had fallen in 2017. And when you were describing that situation to me on the phone, you were like, we'd already gotten our miracle.
Right.
It's almost like we envision, like, you know, we have this little basket of miracles up there or whatever. We can only get so many.
Yeah.
And like God is limited in that way, you know. And you said, you know, we had already gotten our miracle. God had healed her then. So I thought, hey, you know, why would we get another miracle when there's so many people out there in need? So you kind of explain how you felt about that.
Right. Yeah. I remember struggling so much with even figuring out how to pray. Like it was like I was trying to be so careful about my words.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, God, you've already given us the miracle ones.
Yeah.
Like, how do I even come before you and ask for it again? And I remember just struggling with that. And I'm like, guys, we already got the miracle. Like, so many people pray for what they believe their first miracle and don't get it. And so I almost had the expectation, like, why? Like, why would I even get that?
Yeah.
But it's like you have to really picture God like a father. And I know as a parent, I want to do anything to make my kids happy.
Right.
I want to do anything, to help them, to bless them, to keep them safe, all of that. And it's like, that's God. He's dad, he's father, and he wants to do that. And if you've been in a situation, or if you're in a situation where you're praying for that miracle, you have to understand we've all received that miracle of Jesus resurrecting. Like, even if you haven't experienced it right in front of your hands, like, we've all received that miracle.
Right.
We've all received the power of the Holy Spirit. And whatever experience you have to lean back on, if you feel you don't have any, you at least have that.
Yeah.
And I just think that's really important.
It's a good point. Yeah. That's a very good point.
We have miracles happen in front of us daily if you just
We do.
really focus.
Right. Well, and you have miracles happen that you're not even aware of. Like, I always think of
Exactly.
all the things that God protects us or shields us from that we don't even know. Like, we get stopped by a train and we think it's a big inconvenience, but what did it prevent us from,
Exactly.
running into if we wouldn't have stopped at that train? There's all kinds of things that go on each and every day. So, and I also think I use that analogy myself too, like God, like the father, the loving parent, because, if you think about your own kids, when they come, like you said, when they come and ask you something, you don't say, well, I've already given you all the things that you're ever going to get for the rest of your life. So sorry, that's not how we are with our kids. And so God is like that with us, and 1,000 times more.
Yeah.
And I think just remembering that God is not limited and we don't have to feel bad or selfish or guilty in going to him and asking him for things, because that's what he wants. He wants that connection. He wants that conversation. I think is so important.
Yeah, and even seeing this as a second miracle, helps me in the today and now. Like, Mom still has great struggles, great fatigue, incredible memory and processing issues.
Sure.
But like you said, he's limitless. And so having seen that, and that God doesn't say, nope, you only get, the phone in God, 2 or 3 times in life. Like, because doctors today will still tell us, like, but she'll never be how she was before. I'm like, but you don't know that. Like, you don't know my God then, because he can do it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so, we keep fighting every day, and thank God, even on the bad days, it's like, okay, well, we got that out of the way now.
Yes.
Now let's get to the good day.
Just one day at a time. Yeah. So I feel like as I listen to your story, there's a lot of hope, there's a lot of positivity, there's a lot of gratitude, but I know you for sure had your moments too.
Oh, yeah.
And we talked about, how there is that element of very human emotion. I think there's this, notion out there that as believers, well, if we know God can do anything, all we have to do is trust. And why are you worried? And why are you angry? And why are you this? But when it comes down to the fact of the matter, we have very human emotions. And you brought up a verse to me, and I want to let you share it and kind of tell how you experienced that and how you process that. But speak to that a little bit.
Yeah, like I, mentioned, my dad and I referred to the Lazarus story so many times while we were just sitting there waiting, and just the incredible story that was. And one of the verses in that story, I think it's in John 11, is the verse, 2 words, Jesus wept. And that just, it makes him feel so human and so relatable.
Yeah.
That even Jesus can be sad, and even God can relate and understand why we're having the emotions that we're having. I turn to that so many times, because more days than not I cry about something.
Yeah.
I'm upset or sad or
Right.
missing how things were, and I'm like, it's okay. Like,
is
God
okay.
meets me in that place.
Yes.
Even though Jesus probably knew he was going to perform that miracle, he was still sad.
Yeah.
And in that moment.
Yeah.
And so it helps me get through the tough moments.
I think that's a really relatable and very applicable verse, like something that anybody could take and just kind of hold on to. Because, I mean, Lindsay and I just met with somebody a while ago who's dealing with a spouse who's got, stage 4 cancer. And she was expressing, like, I'm mad, I'm upset, why me? And feeling very distraught over the situation, and naturally so. And God understands us in those moments and meets us exactly where we're at. And I think that's one of the most awesome things about God is He will meet you where you're at. You don't need to get to a certain level of faith or a certain level of, composure for Him to come and sit right next to you and guide you through it. So
yeah, I mean, a lot of times when I couldn't even come up with the words, like I said, to pray, I just turn on worship music.
Yes.
And I just praise and I cry through it. I'm like,
yes,
I don't have any audible words, but God is still good even through the hard.
Absolutely. So what does life look like today for you guys? So I know you went to the gym this morning and you guys are exercising, which is awesome. But what's kind of life look like now, and just kind of explain that stage of life you're in? Yeah.
Well, I guess I'm curious how you feel. How do you feel every day? Do you feel happy? Are you very much woe is me?
Today's days basically, is just a feeling of gratitude.
Yeah.
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 There's much to be grateful for.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's hard. I mean, a good portion of the day, Mom likes to sleep.
Yeah.
That's a big common factor with brain injuries.
Sure.
So, she has that TBI from 2017.
Yeah.
But now she has a little bit of what's called that anoxia brain injury, which is the lack of oxygen.
Okay.
So it's kind of like... It really is a miracle to me every day to see her stand up, walk,
oh my gosh,
talk.
If she walked,
know who I am.
in here, walked down the stairs. I mean, absolutely.
And to be a survivor of 2 brain injuries, an ABI, acquired brain injury, and a traumatic brain injury. And so fatigue is often a big component of that. And so we see that a lot. She can easily sleep 10 to 12 hours at night, and then she can nap 3 to 4 hours through the day. Just getting off the couch sometimes, lacking the motivation or initiation. She was the one that was getting up, making food for everyone and stuff like that, and we're not seeing that yet. Still having hope. So they're working a lot through her hormones because, again, the brain impacts so much. Yeah. So working through hormones and levels with that. Adrenals, her adrenals have been shot. Yeah. So, and then memory, it's hard. Everyone's like, well, does she know who you are? I'm like, because sometimes, especially, it wasn't like she woke up and she jumped out of bed. Yeah. Like, it was a painful rehab time. Right. She, that all happened April 25th. She didn't come home till August 19th. Wow. It was a very long inpatient rehabilitation. And even the past year, we've seen good progress, but also steps back in other ways. So life today, like she said, we try to focus on gratitude a lot. She loves her
they
babies.
say gratitude changes brain chemistry. Yes. Like there is significant research. There's MRIs to prove it that so you're on the right track. Absolutely. You're doing good things, not only for your mindset, but for your actual brain when you have gratitude. So that's awesome. So I'm curious to know when you woke up, like what was that process like? Did she recognize you and your dad and the rest of the family, and were you able to be verbal right away, or what was kind of that coming out of the coma process?
What I remember?
I'm just curious. What do you think you remember from that?
I feel as though everyone was excited, and it was just a lot of joy. Sure. Because not only had I woken up, but I recognized people, and
I think that was kind of funny because I wanted to be called Julianne or Jules, and or Tiny. My family calls me Tiny because I'm the short one. But she spoke to my dad and I as, what? I think you called me sweetheart. And I'm like, well, that's nice, but like, what's my name?
Can you be more specific?
Yeah. I mean, there were some days immediately that first week or two that we were glad if she spoke 1 or 2 words that day.
Yeah.
I mean, there wasn't a lot of communication happening. It was a lot of staring off. It was very slow. But the shirt she's wearing today was kind of a cool story.
I noticed that, yes. I noticed that. So what's your shirt say?
It says, "Let me tell you about my Jesus," and saves sinners.
Makes a way over here.
Makes a way.
Yeah. Rises from an empty grave.
Yeah, rises from an empty grave.
So share with Molly the significance of that. Do you remember?
No.
Okay. So when Mom, it was that time period, we were still in the ICU. We knew she wasn't going to do the organ donation, but we were still waiting for her to wake up.
Okay.
And so one of her closest dear friends that was there often through that week, she's a nurse herself, so she's in there blaring music, and we're like, oh, like it sounds like a party's happening in here. And she would play the Ann Wilson song, My Jesus.
I was going to say, I love that song.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so Mom was asleep during that time. Well, on Sunday, they came back when we were going back up, and Julie was playing that song on repeat, and she would sing along to it. And so it's like she wasn't communicating a ton, but almost any time those 2 weeks after that we played it, we could get her to mouth along, and I have video clips of it too.
Oh, wow.
It's like, there's not much leading up to it, and then it's like, and what's cool is we had looked up when that song came out, and she didn't know it before that.
Really?
Yeah,
That's
it came out
interesting.
like that week.
Yeah.
So, she did not know that song beforehand.
Wow.
But now can sing along.
That's right. Well, they always say, if people are in a coma, they can still totally hear you. They can hear music. That's why they always encourage people, to keep speaking to them and everything.
Yeah.
So you literally learned a song while you were in a coma, which is amazing. Yeah, that's awesome.
I did.
That's awesome. So there was a part of your story that I loved. We were talking about the mustard seed.
Yes.
I think when you explain the context of this verse, it is so serendipitous to your story. It's so profound.
Yeah.
So can you speak to that a little bit?
Absolutely. It's almost a little embarrassing that it took so long for me to look up all of it.
Yeah.
But, I had shared that the day she was being transferred, a friend gave us a mustard seed and said, it only takes a mustard seed. You only need mustard seed sized faith.
Yeah.
And that gave me such relief because I'm like, okay, that might be all I have right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so the mustard seed was very important. And so through Mom's recovery, we did a little fundraiser with T-shirts, and we even used that verse, the mustard seed verse. And so that was July, August that we did the T-shirts. I don't think it was till the spring that I was like, oh, okay, we love that verse, but I don't remember the context that led up to it.
Yeah.
And so I looked up, the chapter, and I'm trying to read it, and it's like, okay, it's Jesus telling his disciples, ye of little faith, you only need faith the size of a mustard seed to move this mountain. Tell it to move from here to there, and it'll move.
Right.
And the disciples at the time, they were frustrated because they were trying to heal this little boy. And the little boy was dealing with seizures.
Yeah.
That is so when I went back and read that, I was like,
yes.
So I just keep praying that over her. I'm like, that mustard seed, I have it. We can move it.
Yeah.
Very,
I love
very
that.
godlike.
I love that about God's word. That's happened to me many times in my life where you are reading something and it's so profound. It's they say that God's word is living and breathing for a reason.
Right.
It's I am supposed to read this. And I would say, you were supposed to read it at that time.
Because she had a breakthrough seizure in March. So I think it was around that time.
Yeah, there you go. So it's just I love that because it goes to show that is one of the number one ways God communicates with us,
absolutely.
And for that's not accident. It's not coincidence. That is 100% for a reason.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm curious to know, I know you have kids. How many kids do you have?
I have 3,
3. What's their ages?
9, 8, and 4.
9, 8, and 4.
Yep.
So how have they experienced, like, what's been their experience watching grandma go through this?
Right.
And, how have you gotten beside them as their mom and guided them through this?
Yeah. That is pretty cool because my kids have always been very close with my mom. I'm very close with her.
Yeah.
They see her and are very close with her often. And so they knew she was in the hospital, but we tried to shield them a little bit from the heaviness of it. And then the time came and we sat them down and had the full-on, saying goodbye. We recorded goodbye messages from them.
Wow.
We played them.
Wow. And you actually watched those?
Well,
oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Wow.
We had played them for her. It's one of those things I kind of just want to delete now, forget that.
Yeah, I can't.
But so they fully understood and said their goodbyes. Oh, sorry about that. But yeah, they now they would go to school because it was the last couple weeks left of school, and they were like, God did a miracle. They go to a Christian school, so they go in and they're like, yeah, pray for my grandma, and God did a miracle for us and for her, and so even though at the time they were 7 and 8, oh my gosh, it was amazing. Well, I think Ellery was 6 actually, so it was just to hear them and how their faith has grown. They just think it's natural.
Yeah, this happens every time.
Okay, well, pray about it because God does miracles.
Yes.
So it's been funny. The 4-year-old he struggled more with attention. He's like, why is she getting all this attention and not me?
Yeah, right.
But, the girls, they have absolutely seen God at work.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
And they still get sad sometimes, too, because Grandma would drive them around and different things. But every time they would see her, they would be like, she seems so much better today. And they would keep praying. And if I'm discouraged, they would step in and pray. And I'm like, my 7 and 8-year-old are praying for me.
Yeah.
So it's
cool. And I'm sure those videos were hard for you to watch.
Oh, sure.
But at the same time, I can't imagine the love that you felt. I'm sure watching your grandchildren, say those things to you. That's a gift in itself because most people obviously wouldn't get to see that kind of thing.
Right.
So
Right.
Yeah. How has your faith changed during this? I can't even imagine if you can even put it into words.
Yeah, it's hard, but gosh.
I don't mean to put you on the spot.
No,
your emotion
that's fine.
explains it, says it all. Probably a lot of gratitude and
absolutely.
Yeah.
She talks about her, sometimes when we're talking in private, she'll share a little bit about her experience because I'm like, I felt like you were gone. I felt like there was a time that I was at peace because I believed you were already in heaven.
Right.
Were you in heaven?
Yeah.
And,
were you? Yeah.
And I felt as though I was.
Wow.
And I believed that the experiences that I had were real.
Yeah.
And that
what did it feel like? What did you see?
it's hard to reach that now.
Yeah.
Because, it was so real then.
Yeah. Right.
But, knowing now that, the whole situation turned out quite differently, it's just, I don't know how to put it. But
Yeah, she would explain to me that it was very peaceful. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm glad that you were, resting in peace.
Yes.
We were a little stressed. But,
right.
Yeah, she talks about it very, very peaceful. Very, a lot of gratitude, like you said.
Yeah,
so,
absolutely.
Yeah.
I think God clearly has a purpose you've been saved twice, right? So God
Yes.
clearly has a reason for you still being here. Your work wasn't done, and He just wanted to wake everybody up a little bit, right?
I guess so.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, mom has shared more in talking with you than she's been able to verbalize, you know, any other time. So I'm really grateful that you've shared.
Yeah, no, you've done a great job.
Thank
You've
you.
done a great job. Yeah.
No, I don't think I had shared, you know, while talking today, but my brother is autistic, and
we had talked about that.
Yeah, and so he also had great faith. He's like, my mom's been saved before. She's been in this situation before, and she came back. And so he didn't waver in that, and we didn't want to, you know, scare him too much.
Yeah.
But then the reality came, and it's like, okay, Curtis, this is the last chance you have to see Mom and to, you know, say your goodbyes. And so it was hard, but we took him down with us. I think it was Thursday that week, and he was very brave. He came in and you know, said his byes, and we got pictures of our hands together. And you know, being autistic, it's just like, I don't think we gave him enough credit for it. But he understood. And
Absolutely.
He's like, we're going to be okay. And I'm like, okay. I'm like, okay, you're going to need to walk us through this
Yes.
then.
How old is he?
He just turned 30.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So he's
Yeah.
my little brother. He's very tall. But yeah, and that day, so he was like, I don't want to hang out here all day. He just wanted to kind of,
Just wanted to say his.
just wanted to see Mom and
Yes.
say his bye. And
Yeah.
so we got him home, and the rest of the day, I think we did. We called the funeral home. We called the
Wow,
pastor.
I just can't believe how far
Yeah.
into the process you got, and now you're sitting here today.
Yeah.
I mean, like, miracle is putting it lightly. I mean, that's just like literally.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and I don't think I shared that part. So even in 2017, we felt we got a miracle, and it was just kind of like, okay, you know, she made it through surgery and this brain injury and all of that. This time, there was evidence. You know what I mean? Like,
Yes.
So we had the MRI that showed global damage.
Yeah.
It was just slide after slide of damage.
Yeah.
And so once she was in rehab, I think it was June 1st, we finally got them to do a repeat MRI. So they did the repeat MRI. All of that was gone. All the damage
All
Yeah.
right.
on the
That's
MRI
amazing.
was gone. The only damage that still shows is, you know, from 2017, and that she has scar tissue around it. So, but all of the anoxia, they were like, she still could have it, microscopic, you know, the MRI is not picking it up.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, you know, it just takes a little bit to impact you.
Right.
So definitely understand that, but to have evidence of, okay, well, here's all of this. And I even talked to one of the neuro NPs in March, and I was like, you know, I'm just so afraid with another seizure, are we going to see that damage again? And she's like, no.
Yeah.
She's like, you have to understand, my whole career, I'm never going to see another case like that. She's like, science alone cannot explain it. And I'm like, oh my gosh.
Wow.
Like, okay. So
Yeah.
it was cool to have that evidence, and even have, you know, the people who are so backed and believed by in science, you know, saying, we can't explain
We
this.
don't know. Yeah. There is no explanation except one
Right.
explanation. Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly.
So what does day-to-day life kind of look like? You guys, I know you guys, you know, are obviously, we just said a little bit ago, exercise, but what's kind of your treatment plan as you continue to work to get stronger and just heal? Do you do physical therapy? And I'm
Yeah.
assuming-
So, Mom is doing physical therapy, and it's hard. My dad is working from home full time. His work has been very gracious. So he is sitting at his desk all day long working.
Yeah.
But he's basically home to make sure Mom is safe, that
Yep.
an emergency, you know, doesn't arise, things like that. But he's not able to, like, tell her, okay, get up and do, you know, 20 jumping jacks or anything.
Well, and the fatigue is an issue, like
The
you said.
fatigue.
Yeah.
So a lot of it falls on me, and I do work part-time, but I come over just about every day, maybe 3 to 4 days during the week. And so we'll either go to therapy. We're starting to go to the gym to even add in more strength training that I can be a part of too, which is nice.
That's awesome.
Sometimes it looks like going shopping or just running errands, taking my kids here to there.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of just trying to get back to live life. Like it's just so hard to even take care of the domestic house duties and
Sure.
things. So just trying to get her engaged in that, but also being mindful that she needs to rest too. So we were in speech therapy, which is, you think it's just, talking, but it's very much cognitive therapy. But they wanted us to get into living life as therapy.
Yeah.
Which I'm grateful for, because it was hard to drive an hour to Ohio State there and back.
Right.
That kind of wiped out a day and wiped us out. So it's nice to do more of living life, and we'll do puzzles and cognitive activities. We're into Legos. We've been working on Legos.
But your kids like that.
Oh yeah. So we just try to make our best at it each day.
And I have to say, I know you already know this 100%, but you are so blessed to have a daughter like that is taking care of you the way she is. I mean, the way that you're just have totally taken this role on, which I know has to be extremely taxing and difficult for you. But I mean, I commend you so much, because not everybody does that.
Thank you.
And I'm sure your mom feels extremely loved and taken care of.
Grateful.
Right.
Yeah.
100%. Yeah. Well, I appreciate you guys so much taking time to come and share the story. The thing that I'm kind of taking away from this is, and it's interesting because it's the same story, Lazarus. Okay.
Right.
So there's a part in there, and I'm paraphrasing, but it's Martha or Mary. I don't remember. I don't know 100%, but I know that they say Lazarus has already died, and they say even now, you could heal him. You could choose to wake him up.
Right.
And you hear people say God is an even now kind of God. Like even in the most dire situation, even in that last moment. And you were literally in your last moments. And even then, God stepped in and healed you. And so I think that this is the ultimate message of hope and encouragement, and for people, no matter what their situation is, to look at what you've been through, and to look at the fact that you're sitting here and you're getting stronger each day, and you're healing, and you can recognize your loved ones. And I mean, that is just unheard of, considering what you've been through. So God definitely is in the business of performing miracles, and I think that you're a walking testament to that. So
Thank you.
Thank you for being willing to share your story.
Yeah.
Thank you for having us. Yeah.
Yeah, it's an honor. I felt God in the time told us that we would be sharing it far and wide. And so it's cool to be in that part of the journey now.
Yes, right. On the other side of it, for sure.
Thank you.